This is the Global Podcast Network, where executives and professionals connect, share, and inspire. Stay tuned for the conversations that drive success.
And welcome back, everyone. She is the woman behind the Center for Relational Wellness. And I love the name of her practice, because we all crave connection, relationships, and that helps foster our wellness. But also in that word is relations, i.e., sex. And there is a lot of science out there says that why we should engage maybe more frequently than we do. There's a whole bunch of health benefits. We're going to start there today. She is a psychotherapist and runs deep with all of this. She's Sara Vargas. She's back with us. How are you doing today?
I'm well, thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Same, same. And I've been hearing more and more research about the benefits of intimacy in terms of not just mentally, but also physically, the release of chemicals and such. Can we start with that?
Sure. Certainly there are lots of health benefits, right? Lots of endorphins get released, all sorts of, as if you were to go to the gym, right? Like when you go to the gym, typically after you feel a little bit of a boost, you feel a little bit better in your mood. Is that the case for everyone? No, right? But there certainly are tremendous benefits to having intercourse, right? Or even simple touch, connection,
Yep.
holding, hugging, those sorts of things can certainly have a physical impact. But if you are in relationship, right, it can also help to strengthen those connections and bonds with your partner.
Hmm. You know, do you think that people let's say they're in an intimate relationship, but it's, every once in a while, whatever, and we'll get with that in a moment.
Mhm.
Um, that is, a period goes on, let's say 2 weeks, whatever, and they feel that something's missing, but they can't
Mhm.
really put their finger on what it is. But you know, they're maybe antsy, they feel misaligned. And do you think it's because maybe they didn't have some kind of intimacy? And again, doesn't have to be one thing. It could be, just hugging, whatever it might be. Do you think that happens for a lot of us and we don't even realize what's going on?
Oh, sure. I mean, it's kind of it's twofold, right? In some ways, is it the lack of emotional or physical connection contributing? Yes. And right, the emotional difficulties in the relationship are also connecting to the lack of connection that's happening physically between the couple. Right.
Hmm.
So it goes hand in hand, right? Sometimes you're not feeling good with your partner, you're angry, you're upset, you're feeling really alone. So it makes you not want to have sex with them, right? You feel more distant, you don't want to connect. Your partner might be wondering, why is my partner not touching me? Why aren't they coming close to me? Right. And it kind of turns into this cycle where then sex can become scary or uncomfortable because now we're not talking about what's actually happening between the two of us.
Yep. Yeah. And, I'm looking at it. And that's relationship challenges there in a lot of regards, which you help people with. I'm even just looking, let's say you're somebody, dating someone. We're dating a
Mhm.
few people.
Sure.
You're intimate with them, whatever it is. So you don't worry about that relationship connection so much.
Sure.
But I'm talking about the chemical release, the craving, the connection, which happens in all relationships. But
Sure.
I'm factoring out that connection where, oh my God, they didn't want to, connect with me. Do they not love me anymore? I'm
Mhm.
factoring that out. It's very important, but just the
This is
physiological, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, for some people, right? That I mean, it's hard to separate the emotional from the physical, even
yeah,
if you're just casual dating, even if you are just into hookups, which there's nothing wrong with that, right? I want to make that clear. Like
gotcha.
if you are only interested in meeting with folks for intercourse, or there's absolutely nothing wrong with
And
that,
and
right?
and as long as both parties are on the same page.
Exactly. As long as there's consent, we're all good, right? But certainly, for some folks, um, it helps them feel better about themselves if they're having
Yes.
it more regularly, right? Like because this is how they experience, for some people, some self-worth or connection to others or feeling desired, right? Those sorts of things. So it's not exactly just the penetrative sex, right? It's what it means that ends up being the most important part of it, right? So yes, do you get all of these great benefits physically? Yes. And for a lot of folks, it's actually, even if you're just having casual sex, there are usually more components to that, right? Usually it has a lot more to do with what's happening for you, why you're craving the sex, why you're desiring the sex.
Yeah, that's a really great point. Let's look at that one for a moment. And that could be in any relationship. So let's go there right there.
Sure.
Um, it could go back to needs even from childhood. Now, obviously, you're a kid. It's not like, you're craving sex
Right.
until you get to, teeny years, possibly. Um, but there's deep emotional, I feel, connection in many of us
Yeah.
to that intimacy, right?
Absolutely. I can think of an example where there's an individual who he really longs for sex, right, with his partner. Because, for example, to your point, growing up, he didn't get a whole lot of verbal affirmations, right, from his
Yep.
family. There wasn't a lot of verbal recognition. So for him, the physical stuff becomes really important because of the lack of language, right, that exists when you need something to feel validated, heard, understood. The sex ends up taking up the space. Right. So when he's not having sex with his partner, he's wondering what's going on. I'm not wanted, right? Where the sex actually becomes this like self-soothing mechanism.
Mm, yes.
Hmm. Hmm.
If you're in that case, and I think that applies to many, I really do, whether we want
It
to
does.
admit it or not, right?
Yep, yep.
I know
Same
we're
answer.
going, I know we're going a little deep here, but the kind of fundamental things we're hitting upon.
Yeah.
When you, let's say you realize that, a little
Uh-huh.
connection, um, what's the answer? Because now you're always going to be looking for that. And maybe that's not always available. Your partner, they're not feeling it today, tonight, tomorrow, whatever it might be. And I love what you said, soothing like a baby,
Yeah.
and it's in a lot of ways, if you strip it down, so to speak, that's what it is.
Hmm.
What do you do at that point?
Yeah, I think I see a lot of folks with desire discrepancy where one person, right, is the one who is more driven by the sex, right? And the other person maybe has a little bit lower desire, right? And so sex becomes this thing, right? This really overwhelming, playing chip in a way,
Yeah.
right? Like if I'm not having sex, I'm feeling disconnected. I don't feel close to you. I feel insecure, all these things, right? But what you notice is that when you start to build connection in other ways, maybe you have, dinner together, just the two of you. You have kids, right? It's sometimes hard to make that time. But like if you're just spending the time together, we're spending more time hugging each other, even like a gentle kiss on the forehead, right? When you start noticing that there's more connection, the sex becomes less stressful
Mm,
and less overwhelming that you're not having it when you are feeling secure in the relationship and more connected. So what do you do, right? You try to build other ways to have connection between the two of you.
would you say it would make sense if you're putting that high value on sex,
Hmm.
and you're aware of it now? This is kind of making sense
Yeah.
to take that and now turn it into, when you hug that person, make it more meaningful,
Hmm.
a longer embrace, kiss on the forehead, as opposed to, hey, how you doing? All right, yeah, all right, la, 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 la. Hey, 8 o'clock tonight. Let's kids in bed.
Right.
Blah, blah, blah. You
Which
know,
happens.
right? It's called life. At that point, do you think it's just being intentional to make the other things count almost as much in terms of soothing you?
Absolutely. I mean, you make a really helpful point, right? Because when you start feeling more, seen, more connected, and certainly, with a lot of folks, if you are embracing without the intention of having sex, that becomes more powerful, right? Because I have these couples sometimes where it's like, okay, we're gonna hug, and one partner thinks that means we're having sex. where the other partner feels so disappointed because they just want to be held for a little bit, right?
Hmm.
Without the expectation of sex. So when you can find a balance in that, when you can say, like, we're just going to hug because we want to be close to each other, we want to feel emotionally intimate,
Yep.
that can be so powerful, right? Like, now I'm
So
feeling
powerful.
heard. Now I'm feeling understood. Now I want to have sex tomorrow because my partner is actually listening to me,
Right.
right?
Right.
So that actually builds so that you can have better quality sex.
Hmm. And it can even be to the point where you're holding each other, embracing just so tight, just close on, if you will, that
Yes,
it can be almost as good as, if not better than, the actual act if you're intentional about it.
I think that's the key word that you're using, right? The intentionality behind it. That makes such a big difference, right? Like, yes, fully clothed in the kitchen, middle of the afternoon, you're just holding each other can be incredibly satisfying and powerful for folks.
Even in bed, even if you're lying in bed, I'm going to be transparent. I've experienced it. And like, it- nothing physical other than embracing close and just, like, wow, that was really good.
Exactly.
I don't know if I could be topped at this moment with anything else, further, because there was a connection. Why are there connections? I don't think we realize the amazing energetic exchange during sex, right?
Exactly. I mean, there's so much more that goes into sex than just penetration, right? Penetration is kind of, it's a part of it. And but it's more about the experience, right? That's most important. But unfortunately, a lot of folks look at sex as this goal driven thing, right? I have to achieve orgasm. I have to have penetrative sex. That's the only way it's going to be satisfying. The problem with that is that once you start looking at sex as this goal oriented thing,
Mm.
um, it kills the pleasure. It kills the joy. And it makes it actually harder for you to have an orgasm, men and women.
Yeah, because there's pressure. There's worry. It's,
Right?
and is it going to work for me? Are they happy? You should be thinking about their happiness and all of that.
Yep.
Like they say, it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. But when I
Yep.
say the journey, I don't just mean the foreplay. I mean everything around that leads up to. So I want to turn the car around in terms of the journey for a moment.
Okay.
I read about celebrities, and how some, I was reading recently, don't even need to get into the names, but they say, they've been celibate for, 2
Oh,
years, 3 years. And I look at that and I don't judge. And I'm like, hmm, what's going on there? What are your thoughts?
you know, I do wonder, you're right? I'm curious about the intention. I'm going to use your word, right? I'm really curious about the intention behind that, right? Certainly there's no shame in that or anything like that, but I am curious in terms of what the purpose is, right? For some folks, it might just be that they've been really disappointed with their previous experiences and are hoping to, either find a different connection with others or with themselves
Mm,
even, right?
mm.
So that makes me also curious, like, are folks masturbating or is that off the table also,
It's a really good
right?
point. Nobody ever talks about that in those
Oh,
articles, so
yeah,
you wonder, um, because they're, yeah, can't take that away. There's a release there, and same
yeah,
chemicals, maybe not as many, but maybe, who knows?
yeah.
Um, but it seems like all of them or most of them that talk about, 2 years have gone by, that, and men and
Yep.
women, that they focused on other things in their life, maybe success or them and things. But I wonder, does that really, no judgment. I'm curious. Does it make a difference? And why do they have to do that? Is that because, maybe in terms of evolution, you're always thinking about that, even though you might not be, aware of it, but you're always thinking about it. What do you think?
Well, I certainly think that sex can cloud, right, how you're viewing yourself and others, right? Like, if you are not, you know, participating with intention, right? Like, what is it for you? What is happening for you, right? Sometimes it can be really helpful to not have sex if you just really need to recenter and you're actually doing some work for yourself, right? Like, what is the point here? Like, what do I actually want to work on? Am I trying to understand myself better? Am I trying to be, a better person in relationship with others? What is this actually about, right? The not having sex is fine, right? Like, it doesn't it's okay, right? There's nothing absolutely wrong with that whatsoever.
Mhm.
It's more about, mm, what's the purpose, right? Like, what is this coming from? Is there a fear, right? Is there some sort of anxiety, right? What's the worry here? And then of course there are folks who are, would describe themselves as asexual, but that's a whole different
Yeah.
conversation.
Podcast. Yeah, for sure. You see these studies come up a lot of times in terms of frequency and
Yeah,
going by memory here. The last one I saw from what seemed to be a reputable source where people call it 25 to 34 in that territory, a few times a week. Now you get into, a little bit older than that, call it like 45-ish, once a week-ish. And then, 50 could be, typically the baseline is like once a week. And even getting older,
sure.
not once a week. So you're more about, as I detect, more about the quality as opposed to the quantity, right?
Absolutely. Because what is the quantity? Like, what are you getting from the quantity? What does that even mean? Right? Like, how do you know what's too much? How do you know what's not enough? Right? It's more, are you satisfied? Right? That's the most important part. Is this feeling satisfactory to me? Right? Do I feel satisfied? Am I happy with my sex life? The quantity it can feel arbitrary, right? It's more about the quality either for yourself, for your relationship, right? What does it mean? Are you on, if you are not partnered, right? What does that mean for you, right? Am I having casual sex and every once in a while is fine? If I'm in a long-term committed relationship, what does that look like? Because every couple is different. There are some folks who have sex multiple times a week and they might say that's not enough. And there are other folks that are saying like, oh my gosh, I can only handle 4 times a month. Right. So really, um, I don't know that it's so important to think about the quantity rather the quality.
Mm. Sometimes it's great, to look forward to, 2 weeks from now where, hey, going on vacation and I don't know,
Yeah.
it's going to be good. You
Patient's like
know?
the whole other thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I'm sure it's probably one of the most common things that you work with couples on where one part of the couple wants more often, the other part doesn't want more
Yep.
often. How do you deal with that? That's got to be a challenge for you and them.
Yeah, one, we try to understand what the meaning behind the quantity even is. Like, why do you have to have it more often, whatever that number is, right? Like, and you want to understand where this number is coming from, where this idea is coming from. If I look at some of my hetero couples, for example, sometimes the male partner might link that to his, masculinity, right? Like, because society tells me that I'm a man, I should want to have sex all of the time, right? And then that can create a lot of problems because they might not be the one that actually wants to have sex that often. It might be the female partner, right? And so then they feel really awful about themselves when they're like, I'm not meeting these expectations of what it means to be a man, right? So that has a whole nother impact on the relationship. And
Mm.
and that can be really painful for the two, right? Because it can feel confusing when it's against what society norms are saying, right? Which society norms are ridiculous. There's no right or wrong way to be in a relationship or to have sex. Right.
You hit it right there where, the man thinks that, well, I should be because I'm a man and that's what I'm wired for, blah, 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 blah. And that just, it's like society programs his mind to think that there's something wrong if I'm not.
Yep.
And if I'm not feeling it, then he thinks there's something wrong with him. And then if his
Mhm.
partner is on a different page there in terms of how often, then he feels like there's something wrong with him as well.
Yep.
It's very challenging.
It is. It is. It's so it's not this like easy thing. I think a lot of folks think that sex therapy is the thing where you just come in, I give you some tools and you're done. It is not that, right? It is far more complicated, where you have to understand where these beliefs are coming from, where is the desire coming from, what is it about, what makes sense for this particular couple in front of me, right? Because every single couple is a little bit different, right? Like quantity, that's why I say quantity. What's quantity? It doesn't really matter. It's more about what's happening in terms of the relationship. What does the quality look like? Where's the shame coming from, right? Are you both participating in the shame, right? And somehow you're communicating something to your partner that's making them feel inadequate, right? Which can be hugely problematic, right? And then again, sex becomes this like commodity, right? This thing versus something that's meant to be pleasurable for the two of you or three of you, however many.
Oh, we just
Mhm.
opened another door.
Yeah,
Let's go.
I'm like,
Let's go through that door now. um,
okay.
do you ever in session, Sarah, um, just lay it on the line? What's your fantasy? When you're working with a couple, what is it? What right now? Let's talk about it. Don't be afraid to. What are you thinking? What would really amp it up for you? And then to the other person. Has that ever happened?
Oh, sure. It's up to the therapist to bring those conversations to the table, right? Because a lot of folks, again, walk in with a lot of shame. Is there something wrong with me? I have this desire. What's going on? And usually folks are pretty typical, right? Like, even if you think you have wild fantasies, they're usually
Not as wild
pretty
as you think they
standard.
are.
That is why, even like, there's lots of folks who are into BDSM, kinky, all these other things, right? Where that's actually quite common, right? It's even things that seem more vanilla, like tying your partner's hands down or something like that.
Mhm.
That might feel vanilla to a lot of folks, but it's actually considered a kink, right? And so really it's up to us as the clinician to be able to say, like, tell me what you desire, tell me what you're into, tell me what you wish that you could have with your partner. It's up to us to open that door, because I think folks are often pretty afraid of naming their desires, certainly in front of their partner, if their partner isn't aware of this, because that can be scary.
Yeah, yeah, and I guess it's a no judgment zone when they're in your office and kind of expressing things. Final question, based on what we're talking about here. What if you're at the point in your relationship where it's all right, but I want something different, but you don't know what you want. It's almost like you're sitting with the menu at the restaurant, and it's like, yeah, I
Yeah.
always order the same thing, but I'm not really sure what I want here. How do you figure that out yourself? Whether it's best to do it on your own journey to, think about it, or suggestions from you. What if you're in that situation? What's the best way to ride that?
Yep, I kind of walk with them and ask them to think about, in your ideal relationship, what would it look like, right? What do you imagine you'd be interested in? What are you curious about, right? Really opening the door. We do talk about the menu actually a lot. So I love that you use that, because most folks have a pretty standard menu, right? But maybe you want to flip the page a little bit and look at what's on the other side. Maybe you want to go to another,
Yeah, well, I
right?
get well. If you go to another restaurant, maybe you're going, that's somebody else. So we're going to stay in the same restaurant. We're just going
You take your partner. You can
right.
take your partner to the other restaurant and see what else is going on over there, right? Like, what am I in the mood for? There's all sorts of things, right? I might provide some options and ideas, like, oh, have you ever thought about being in more of submissive role? Or, what does that look like? There are some men who do want to be in a more submissive role, right? But they're afraid to say it. Right. So can we drop some, tools for them to kind of guide their way through that? Yes. And I also want to open the door for them to be able to just explore and fantasize and think about that without really feeling like there's any constraints.
Yeah. Um, Interesting, meaningful discussion today, gotta say. And this is what you do, and you can work with people virtually anywhere, right?
Um, Virtually, as a clinician, as a therapist, only in the state of Illinois, as a consultant. In other ways, I can work anywhere else.
Beautiful. Sarah, what's the best way to connect with you?
Yep. So our email is info@centerrw.com. And our phone number is 224-294-1001. So I think
Beautiful.
that's Yeah,
Yeah.
all of our, you can check out our website, centerrw.com.
Thank you for today. Here's hoping everybody flips a page on the menu if that works for you. And
Perfect.
we'll get together next time. Appreciate it.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This is the Global Podcast Network, where executives and professionals connect, share, and inspire. Stay tuned for the conversations that drive success.